everyone. My name is Ed Pancost. This is our first video. We are going to discuss how to scan slides with a DSLR setup, kind of like what we've got here. If you don't have a scanner, you want to scan some of your medium format stuff, your large format negatives, best way to do it is with your DSLR. So the setup I've got here is pretty simple, pretty basic. It's not as hokey as some of the other ones that I've seen on the internet. I didn't like those, and I don't have a scanner nor the means to purchase a scanner, so this is what we'll have to do. So basically, I'll just kind of pull it apart for you here. We have a Geppi light table. I think it's Geppi. It's a G2002 light panel. It's a cold cathode lamp light panel. It doesn't warm up, which is great. It does get a little bit warm at the top, but it won't heat up your negatives, so it won't warp them, it won't bend them, which is what you want. What's really nice about this, it's battery powered, so it's got AA batteries on the side here, so you can use it in the field for looking at slides or right after you get them from the photo finishers there at your local lab. But it's great for that. So basically, you just have that plugged in. And then we have these negative holders. I got these off of my 4x5 and larger. I've got a few. This is a 6x6. The one I'm using right now is a 6x7. They also come in 2 1/4 by 3 1/4, and here's a 6x9. It's a little bit more panoramic image. I also have 4x5s and 35s, but we're just doing 60 millimeter film right now, so we're just going to do that. This is all slide film. Not that it matters, but basically these come in two parts. There's the top and the bottom. These ones have a special flange on the bottom, so they fit in the enlarger well. That should go down when you put it on here, because it has these little pins that you can line up the film with, and then they go together like this. They hold the film really flat because all the edges are flat, so the film doesn't warp and it stays nice and flat, and you don't have any bends and weird things with the focus getting thrown off by that. So basically set that there. Then we've got a tripod. This is a Manfrotto 190C something, so carbon fiber, and it's got a flip up and down main post. We flipped it upside down and had the ball head on the other side. Then we leveled the camera and we attached it there. Now I put a lens on here. This is an old 28-70, 3.5 to 4.5D. I honestly, because it's a manual, the way we have it set up is we've got a 27 millimeter extension ring on here from Nikon. So we put those two together. This one, since it's a variable aperture, it's kind of hard to set up with the manual lens control, so you just kind of have to play with the exposure a little bit when you're doing that. But I would suggest getting a dedicated macro lens. They make a really good 60 millimeter macro. The only problem is it's 60 millimeters, so you're pretty close to your image when you want to get a 1-to-1 reproduction ratio. So say you're scanning 35s and you want to use the entire full frame on like this is a D700, so it's a full frame. You fill the full frame up with that, you have to get really close to the image. They do have other ones. I don't know if they're 1-to-1 production ratio. I think the 105 macro lens is, but it's all up to whatever your personal preferences are. So we're shooting a D700 here, and then we also have a cable release. I'm shooting the D700 in mirror up mode, so the mirror goes up before the picture's taken, and then you tell it to take the picture. So that gets rid of vibration and anything that can cause blur. Because we're taking such a small picture, we can't have any vibrations, or very much vibration. So I'm going to just put this other glove on real quick. One of the big things you want is to make sure you don't get fingerprints on these, because it will diminish the life of the slide. You don't want to, it's just bad for the slide film. I had this developed at my local laboratory. This is RDP3, so I think that's Provia 100. Not that that matters right now. Also, in our little arsenal of scanning stuff, we have a duster, an air duster. We want to get rid of all those little dust specks and things like that when we get this all set up. So I'll turn this on, and it might take a little bit to get back up to bright temperature, but it'll do good. It's a 5,000 Kelvin temperature, so you can set your white balance on your camera for that. You'll get a pretty good white balance. Now, one thing you'll notice is when you're scanning your slide film on with a camera, you will not get the same dynamic range as the slide film has. For some reason, it looks like it appears that slide film has a pretty good dynamic range, though for some reason, it just doesn't. It's not supposed to. But this stuff has pretty good dynamic range. So when you're taking pictures of it, it might look a little bit flatter and your colors aren't exactly right. So I suggest shooting in RAW and kind of underexposing it, because then you can pull out the colors again in Lightroom or a Camera Raw. So I know it's all blown out on the image, so you can't really see it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this into live view mode. What that'll do is that'll let me see the picture and do my focusing. So I'll get the picture centered in the frame. You'll notice it doesn't fill up the entire frame, or you can just kind of see it doesn't fill up the entire image area of the sensor. So you're not going to get the entire resolution out of it. If you have one of the big megapixel cameras like the new Sony Alpha 7R or the D800, they both got 36 megapixels on a full frame, then you get all kinds of good resolution. So then you really crop those down. Maybe you're getting 24, but you're still getting a lot. Get that medium format quality back out of these slides. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the zoom in feature. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to confirm I'm going to just kind of move back and forth past the focus point, see where it's really sharp. And you can really tell because slide film has virtually no grain at all. It's weird. It's not like color film. It's not like Ektar, the finest grain film, color film. It's got virtually no grain. It's the way the chemistry is. It's beautiful. So that's why a lot of people really like it for this kind of stuff. You don't get film grain. You get these really awesome colors, when you shoot the right kind. Anyway, so we'll go into taking the actual picture. So what I'll do is I'm going to set this back into mirror up mode. You can kind of hear it. So what will happen is I'm going to hit the shutter release. So that's the mirror going up. I let the vibrations die down a little bit because I don't want those residual vibrations ruining the sharpness of the picture I'm taking. Okay? There you go. The picture's taken. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but the picture's considerably underexposed. I'll show you on the computer when we get there. That helps me keep the colors really nice and beautiful. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that plate off, move it up to my next frame. If you'll notice that the 6x7 is a lot bigger than this because this was shot with a Mamiya 645 Pro TL. So it's a 6 centimeter by 4.5 centimeter aspect ratio. You can see that right here. Or I guess you can't see it because it's kind of blown out. But basically, it's the same ratio, but this allows me to kind of line up my pictures, and I also don't have a 645 enlarging. I don't have that set up because I don't shoot. I just got the camera, so I don't have a lot of that. So we're just going to line that up again. Now the focus is already set because it's in manual mode, so it's not going to autofocus. So all we're going to do is we're just going to look through the viewfinder just to make sure that the focus is still good. And actually, I'm gonna go back in because it looks like it might have changed a little bit, which it shouldn't have, but probably did. So we're just going to go back in. We're going to hit the zoom in button. We're going to kind of run the focus back and forth, see where it's nice and sharp. And you'll be able to tell where it's really nice and sharp. So then we'll bring it back into mirror up. Just so you know, I have this at f8, or at least the lens setting is f8, and this is reading f8, so it might be a little bit different because of the zoom lens. And then we're going to just do the mirror up, let those vibrations die down, take the picture. Now this one was pretty underexposed, like too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in here and I have this set to expose about 1 2/3 stop under what the manual says. So I'm just going to go with 1 stop under. See how that works. Because each one's a little bit different. Each one lets a little bit less light through and more light through. So you're going to kind of have to adjust. You might end up taking quite a few images, but it's worth it with this slide film. So I'm just going to take a few more to kind of show you I'm just going to take this last one right here with this sign. It's all lined up. We'll check the alignment. It doesn't have to be square in there because you're going to end up cropping it. So that's the mirror up. All right, the picture was taken. Now that one's really dark, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to just expose it normal. That one's really dark for some reason. So this is half a second at f8 exposure. Ah, much better. Now see, some of these highlights are being blown out. That's just because of the sky on that day. So now we're going to move over to the computer and see what... Alright, so here we are in Lightroom. We've got all of our pictures imported. I've already done a few. Here's one I did already. Color's not great on it, but it's good enough for me. Kind of has that slide look, that blue slide look. And here's another one I did of a cabin in the woods. It's a little bit reddish. You can see in the bark that's a little bit red. So the white balance isn't perfect, but it works. Those slide films you don't get perfect white balance. You get really good colors, but the white balance isn't the best. Just because of how the emulsions work and how it reacts to different types of light. So we're going to go in here. Here's one. This one's actually, the white balance is pretty good on it. Just looking at it, we're just going to go in here and we're going to turn the before after off. And we're going to go in and crop it. When you're doing it this way, you'll have to crop your frames. Just, you can see why. I'm just guessing the bottom edge there because it was pretty black in the actual slide. We'll kind of square it up there with the top edge. And I don't care if I lose some of this because, you know, the very edges of the picture, as long as it doesn't change the aspect ratio dramatically, it looks pretty good. And then we're going to go up here and rotate this. Of course, I don't know all of my little settings and all that stuff, so don't get mad at me. We're going to go in here, we're going to change this to 5,000, because that's what we had for our white balance on the table. And then we're going to go in here, we're going to play with the tint a little bit. We can bring it down here and it kind of gives it this sunlighty look, and we can bring it back up, and I'm looking at the slide right now. It's to my left, and it's probably right there because those rocks were kind of a warm light because it was the I think it was sunset, so it was just the sun was just starting to go down, so you're getting this warm light in here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come down here. We're going to kind of bring down the exposure just a little. Actually, we're going to bring it up just a little bit. And we could bring up the contrast, but it starts getting this HDR look. And I want it just normal. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go over here with this little brush tool. I'm going to press O, because that highlights the area that you're brushing on. And I'm just going to change those rocks because they're just blown out and there's no detail in them. So we're just going to kind of bring the exposure down just a little bit and bring the contrast up. We might even bring those highlights just down by themselves. Clarity, we could probably bring that up a little bit, and that helps. It just kind of makes it look a little bit different. See, so those don't look so blown out now. We can go in here, we can go into the highlights, because those basically the highlights are constrained to those rocks in the upper portion. So we might even go down here to whites and just bring those down. Then we'll turn up the contrast just a little bit more, and the exposure up there. So that's pretty good. I feel like maybe we can play with this tone a little bit more. I feel like that's good. That's what I saw. Not a great picture. The composition isn't great, but it's just something that I had that we can show. I'm gonna actually bring up the clarity just a little bit, make it look a little sharper. That clarity increases edge contrast, so brings up, increases the contrast between dark and light areas, so it looks sharper. Kind of gives the illusion of that. I did it, so basically you could do this probably better with a scanner because the scanner has like automatic white balance. You can also set automatic white balance and automatic exposure on your camera when you're taking these pictures, though it's not the best. You'd probably just, you know, do well enough, and if you're shooting in RAW, then you can obviously get all these pictures exactly how you want them in Lightroom or Camera Raw, whatever you guys use. Also, this is probably a pretty good technique for taking pictures of weird formats like 6x12, 6x17, or the Hasselblad X-Pan format, which is 24mm by 65mm, so it's two 35mm frames put together. That's a pretty neat one, but This one, if you have a light table big enough and your camera is big enough, and you can even just take picture sections of it and stitch those together, and then you get really good resolution. You just have to use a proper macro lens and all that stuff. My suggestion would be is if you're going to do that, do it with everything bigger than medium format, so medium format and up. And then what you would do is you'd get a lens that reproduces 1:1. So you just zoom in on a little 35 millimeter frame area of the picture, take that and then move it over a little bit, take another picture, and then you get 4 or 5 pictures, even more on 4x5. You stitch them all together in Photoshop. Because it's all flat, you really won't have distortion, but I would suggest getting a longer length lens, like 60, maybe 105 macro lens, just because that'll keep everything flat and near distortion free. Then when you stitch them together, the program won't be trying to fix the distortion in there. So that's it for today. Our next video is probably going to be about flash. I got this. I was doing some flash photography on some taxidermy we have in our house, and it's difficult to do just because there's so much you have to light. And this was done with 2 lights, 2 speed lights, the 180 watt second manual speed lights. Actually, sorry, mono lights, not speed lights. And then I also did it on this bronze. Now this bronze has hot spots on it. I was just playing with it without doing double diffusion, getting rid of these hot spots. We'll go over that in the other video. But for now, it's just what we did in this with the slides. So hopefully you enjoyed the video.